My magic will tear you apart.
Holla ballers and welcome to your Fire Mage guide for 725, and I'm pretty sure we're doing this at an appropriate time as fire, especially if you've already been in the mage community for a little while, is something of a talking point right now. Viable? Yes. Need to think about it? Yes. Yes you do. So without further ado, let's get into some fire stuff. So let's take a look at the basics of the Fire Mage. Now, Mage is my main character. As you can see, he's 926 of 929. He's not too shabby at all. So I might mention some things that are more top end that the basic guys don't really care about yet, but I'm going to try and keep it relatively simple. Stats-wise, it's a bit of a hodgepodge, but when you're starting out your Fire Mage, you want to sort your crit out immediately, right? 50% crit all the way up to 60 is pretty nice to get as a base before you start messing around with other things. Now, the reason I want to talk about Fire Mage a little bit is recently, with the way Tomb of Sargeras is working, particularly in Mythic, right? I want that to be absolutely clear. In Mythic, Fire Mage has become a little bit of a popular thing. Now, you can use the Fire Mage anyway. It's not actually that much worse than Frost in a lot of scenarios, and in some scenarios, it's better. Let's understand what our stats do so this makes more sense. So first of all, you got your Mastery, your Ignite. Your target burns for additional damage of the total direct damage caused by Fireball, Fire Blast, Scorch, and Pyroblast. So our filler spell is Fireball. That's our standard spell. And the way the Fire Mage works is when you crit, you get this heating up mechanic. This means that if you crit again, you'll be able to cast an instant Pyroblast, which is our most powerful spell. So what we have is a spell called Fire Blast. Now, Fire Blast is a very, very instant cast, low damage spell, right? But it guarantees a crit. So when we're heating up, which is when we get a Fireball crit like this, we can Fire Blast, and then we instantly go into this Pyro situation. One of the big things you have to know about fire is ideally, and pretty much in all scenarios, guys, you're going to be casting a Fireball and then the instant Pyro at the same time. And you can see what happens. If they both crit, you go straight back into an instant Pyro, and then you get this reaction like this, where you can keep spamming Fireball and Pyro at the same time, and going back into Fireball and Pyro. The reason this happens is they both hit the target at the same time, and if they double crit, that works out well for you because you go into instant Pyro, and if only one of them crits, it just gives you the heating up, so you can go straight back into Fire Blasting your next one. Not only that, but we have the artifact ability Phoenix Flames, which does tremendous damage, is also instant cast, right? And also guarantees a critical strike. So you have two ways of generating critical strikes. You want to get these recharging, so your opener might look something like Fireball, Phoenix Flames, right? And that'll take you into a hot streak most of the time, and then you can get that going. Now, if you didn't crit, you also have Fire Blast, and you want that recharging as much as possible as well, yeah? So I'm going to be critting constantly here because of a talent, but generally speaking, you want to get these two recharging. Our big DPS cooldown is Combustion. It engulfs you in flames for 14 seconds, increasing your critical strike chance by 100%, so you're guaranteed to crit at this point, and granting you Mastery, that Ignite, equal to 50% of your crit strike stat, so you get huge damage bonus here. Now, what we want during Combustion is as many instant cast Mega Pyros as possible. So when we go into Combustion, we want as many Fire Blasts and Phoenix Flames as possible, so we're just topping off. So let me get the Pyroblast here. I'll show you a standard sort of Combustion. So we're ready to go into Combustion, right? We've got Phoenix Flames, Fire Blast ready. We've got an instant cast Pyro. So what we might do is something like cast the Fireball, pop the Pyro into the crits, and all we're doing is Pyro, Fire Blast, Pyro, Phoenix Flames, Pyro, Fire Blast, Pyro, Phoenix Flames, and we're just firing as many as possible, right? With our new artifact weapon, we actually have a longer Combustion. Our artifact weapon has extended our Combustion from the typical 10 seconds. So if you find yourself with some seconds left on Combustion, no more instant cast left, we can use our other spell, which is Scorch, because it's super fast, right? We don't want to be spending time casting Fireball, because while we're casting this, we're not critting anything. All we want to do is get that Scorch out, and then get as many extra Pyros in as possible, and that'll just give us big, big damage. So, Mastery, our Ignite spreads. Okay, this is very important. Every 2 seconds, your Ignite may spread to another nearby enemy. So what does that mean? It means our Mastery gets much, much better the more targets we're hitting. The more targets we're hitting, the better our Mastery is, because that Ignite is going to naturally spread. So this is one of the reasons that the Fire Mage was nerfed heavily, unnecessarily, because Fire Mage does completely unnecessary and uncontrollable padding. It attacks things that don't need to die, but still bolsters your damage numbers, which gives a very skewed result as to how useful this is. Haste, on the other hand, increases our attack speed and spellcasting, as you well know. So if we're going raw single target, generally speaking, once we've sorted our crit out, you want more haste if it was raw single target. We just want to fire off more fireballs for more pyros, right? Our ignite is less valuable on one target. If we're attacking multiple targets or we're cleaving, like Fallen Avatar, where our ignite can spread to the Maiden, then Mastery becomes more valuable. This means that I've checked this, believe me, this is my main character, I've looked into this in depth. This means that, like, the top logs of Fire Mages right now, some of them have just gone raw crit, like, as much crit as they can humanly get. Some of them have gone raw haste. Some of them have gone loads of Mastery. There's no clear winner at the moment, other than deciding what's best for the encounter that you're doing. Some have even gemming and going for full versatility to try and get something out of that. So at the moment, just sort your crits out in the early days. What's going to be best here is still kind of up for debate. I know somebody in the comments will be telling me what they believe is the correct answer, but I've looked very deep into this, believe me, because we've got to double check these things, our main characters, and it's a little all over the place now based on who's performing well with fire. So our talents will shed some more light on this. Firestarter. Let's talk about Firestarter. A lot of people are seeing the use of Firestarter on top mages. I want to point out, mythic mages, yes. What does Firestarter do? Your Fireball and Pyroblast spells always deal a critical strike when the target is above 90% health. You should instantly be saying to yourself, how long is this enemy going to stay at 50%, above 90% health? Very important question as to whether Firestarter is good or not. In Mythic mode, if you're doing Mythic bosses, they have ludicrous amounts of HP, especially the further into the tomb you go, which means Firestarter becomes better and better and better, particularly if you have these, which kind of are the defining legendary of the Fire Mage. Unfortunately, even after all this time, they are the defining legendary of the Fire Mage. So after consuming a hot streak, that's your instant cast Pyro, there's a 15% chance that your next non-instant Pyro cast within 15 seconds deals 300% additional damage. It hits like a fucking truck. An absolute truck, particularly if you can line it up with DPS cooldowns and stuff like that. So really be aware of Firestarter. Don't just blindly take this. What I'm trying to do is always in these guides is spread the word. Don't just blindly follow what someone at the end game is doing. If you're doing normal and heroic bosses, the chances are they're at 90% health for very, very little time, and therefore this talent becomes completely dead, sometimes seconds into the fight, particularly if you're bloodlusting, and you're not getting the benefit of it, though. If you are looking to do some mythic stuff, though, the reason we take Firestarter is we get plenty of time above 90% health to get a lot of crits. That means we can fish for a Marquis Binding of the Sun King proc, right? That means we can kind of like DPS, so our pull would be something like this, to get these two charging, and then we're trying to hope and pray that our braces proc. Why are we hoping and praying that? Well, we can activate combustion at the end of a spellcast. So there's my braces. So that means I'm like, okay, it's procced. Now I can cast Pyro, and near the end I can fire off the combustion to go with it. And now we're doing huge, huge openers where we're spamming everything and getting massive amounts of damage, kicking straight off with a massive Pyro proc from our braces. Now, you'll make decisions here like, oh, my braces procs, but I only have 2 seconds left on combustion. I might as well fire off these instant pyros, then go into this. You have plenty of time to deal with your braces proc, okay? Plenty of time. And then you see, that's where you're seeing pyroblasts like there, 4.15 million pyroblasts. That's what's happening there. But be aware, if the boss isn't spending any time at 90% health at all, Firestarter becomes way less useful. So please don't blindly follow that. Generally speaking, Conflagration is just flat out better. Pyromaniac sims better, but let me tell you from history, predictability with your Fire Mage is very important. You want to know when you fire stuff off what you're going to be pressing next. Very important. Pyromaniac, you have to kind of hold for a second to see if it procced. So Pyromaniac means casting a Pyro or a Flame Strike while Hot Streak is active, has an 8% chance to instantly give you another one. Plenty of times, and any seasoned Fire Mage will tell you, is you're already pressing something else when this happens to activate a Pyro, and then you're like, oh god, I just wasted a Pyromaniac proc. Which means, generally speaking, Conflagration, which is Fireball, also applies Conflagration to the target, dealing additional damage over 8 seconds, and enemies affected by either Conflag or Ignite have a 10% chance to flare up and deal fire damage to nearby enemies. So it doesn't do a great deal, single target, but generally speaking, it doesn't go to waste, which Pyromaniac often does. But you can get used to Pyromaniac, it's just it feels clumsy to play, is what I'll tell you. Yeah, pick whatever you want for level 30. Most of the time it's going to be Shimmer, so you can keep casting while you're moving around. Not that mobility is an issue. Remember, Scorch can be cast on the move. It's pretty goddamn awesome. Yeah, you never have mobility issues as a Fire Mage. Moving down then. Rune of Power, Incanter's Flow, or Mirror Images. Right, so currently, Rune of Power and Incanter's Flow are extremely close. Mirror Images is the best if you're just doing raw single target. However, if you're going to be moving around a lot, right, and setting up things like, especially as your gear gets better and you're hitting harder and harder and harder, Incanter's Flow becomes better and better. And the reason for that is we don't have to fire our braces proc off. So this, again, revolves around the braces. I'm truly sorry that these braces are so important. Is that you can check your Incanter's Flow and you can fire off even better Mega Pyros, right? You got to think of these of just like, I have this cannon shot. What's the best way I can use it? So you'll see Incanter's Flow going on regularly. If people can stand relatively still, so fights like Goroth where you can stand relatively still for the most part, that means you get a Braces proc and you got your Combustion coming up, things like that. You can pair that up with a Rune of Power, stand still, do absolutely hilarious damage for these short burst windows, and as you've just seen from Combustion, it's a very short window that you can get the full benefit of that. But Mirror Images is pretty close, right? They're all pretty close. If you want to fire off Mirror Images and just fire and forget, which is what it is, I would say that Haste generally is better if you're going with Mirror Images. If you're using a heavy Mastery build, you're probably better with Incanter's Flow or Rune of Power. Level 60. Control Burn doesn't get much use. When you gain Heating Up, you have a 20% chance to instantly activate Hot Streak. Again, it's kind of like Pyromaniac. You're already planning your next, like, 3 spell casts with a Fire Mage once you get used to it. So Control Burn kind of doesn't fit in. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Or it gets wasted because once your crit level's decent enough, and getting 60% or 50% crit isn't that hard anymore. It was at the beginning of Legion, but it's really not. You don't see the benefit. It's far better to have something like Flame On, where you get an extra charge of Fire Blast for that predictability, right? You get regularly extra charges of Fire Blast, you get to make the use of them. Reduces the cooldown of Fire Blast, so you get to do it more often. That is generally considered far better. However, Alexstrasza's Fury was changed a while ago and is now fantastic if you need burst AoE, dungeons, things like that. Dragon's Breath will always critically strike and contributes to Hot Streak. Particularly good if you have, of course, the helmet, which increases Dragon's Breath damage by 100% and its range. In Dungeons, Mythic Plus and stuff, you're rocking fire, you'll be taking Alexstrasza's Fury, because you're still getting the crit and it contributes to Hot Streak. So you can go straight into a Pyro or a Flame Strike with Alexstrasza's Fury. So, but make sure if you take Alexstrasza's Fury, you are making good use of that Dragon's Breath, right? Make sure you're making good use of it. Level 75, generally frenetic speed. Casting Scorch increases your movement. If you're going to be moving and you need to cast Scorch, having the bonus speed is really, really good because it adds up and you get really, really fast very, very quickly, particularly on low health enemies. Level 90, what are you going to take? Living Bomb if there's lots and lots of targets. So you're talking like 5+, 4+, something like that. That's when Living Bomb comes into its own. Flame Patch if there's not that many enemies, but you are going to be burning them for a long time. So an example here might be Desolate Host. Desolate Host has like the targets that... there's only 3 of them, but they chill out for ages in one place while the tank does them. Flame Patch comes into its own there because it's just burning and burning and burning while you're focusing on single target. One Flame Patch will work on them and get them done. Its Flame Strike leaves behind a patch of flames which burn enemies within it. So it'll just burn on the ground. Of everything else, single target, unstable magic. Yeah, Fireball has a 25% chance to explode on impact, dealing 50% additional damage. It's boring, yes, but it is the way to go. A level 100. All 3 of these are now seeing use, and some people are going to lose their mind at that, but they are. Believe me, they are. I've seen the logs. They're in there. Meteor is generally our go-to, especially in raid encounters. There's no raid encounter right now that really warrants one of the other 2. Some people are using Kindling. But let me explain them before I tell you what they do. It calls down a meteor, which lands at the target location after 3 seconds, dealing a million fire damage for me, split evenly amongst all targets. So it's not really an AoE spell, by the way. But it also does burn the ground, dealing 231,000 fire damage over 8 seconds to all the enemies. So that's your AoE component, but the big slam down, that's going to be spread evenly. The good thing about Meteor, 1, it doesn't take up many global cooldowns because it has a 45-second cooldown. And obviously we want to fire off as many fireballs and pyros as possible. And we can do it during combustion. You can hold it for a few seconds. As long as you're not going to miss out on a Meteor over the course of a fight, you can fire one off during combustion at the start of the fight, then fire another one off where combustion's on cooldown, and then fire the next one off in combustion. And generally speaking, you'll be fine with that. If your crit's really high, though, you can just go for it and fire and forget it. Cinderstorm, if you're doing loads and loads of AoE, it does require a little getting used to. I haven't used Cinderstorm in a really long time, and when I came back to Fire to do some testing, I kind of forgot how far these little fireworks go. They do go pretty far. But one thing is to make benefit of them. It's a relatively short cooldown, so you are going to be giving up a lot of global cooldowns to get the use out of Cinderstorm, so make sure if you're doing a lot of AoE that you're definitely going to be getting the benefit of Cinderstorm. Is there an encounter in Tomb I'd use Cinderstorm on? No, not really. You might say something like, especially if you're doing normal heroic, like Mistress Sazine. Yeah, sure, you could do normal and heroic, I suppose. But as you get into the mythic Mistress Sazine, then that's when the ads you don't want to kill them. And it gets all a little bit wonky there. So just bear in mind, like, Dungeons and Mythic Plus, sure. Even at this point, though, given how powerful my mage is, I would probably move away from Cinderstorm and go for something else. Kindling is pretty much your Fireball, Pyro, and Fire Blast crits reduce the remaining cooldown of Combustion by a second. So again, this is actually seeing a lot of use from people who want to line Combustion up for certain moments. I've seen a fair few people using this on Fallen Avatar, as well as Meteor. So the choice is really up to you as to what you use here, but most of the time it's going to be Meteor, right? I'm just going to put it that way without trying to get into too much detail on it. Hopefully that's explained how you choose your talents here. The stats are a little bit wonky, but for the basic, if you're just getting started with a Fire Mage and you want to try it out, please, please, please just focus on getting yourself sorted with your crits, so your crit's nice and comfortable. As I say, I don't like to go below 55%. I really don't. I like 55% up. After that, it's up to you. As you see, I'm pretty even Stevens on mine. I did do a heroic tomb clear last night and a couple of mythic bosses as fire. It was fine. I could see where the advantages are. Just bear in mind, if you're just copying, I'm just desperately aware that a lot of people copy what top mages are doing without understanding really why. So I've seen lots of people running LFR with Firestarter, and they get one spell cast out of it before the boss is below 90% health. Just think about it first, alright? So let's go into some gameplay stuff. So gameplay then. Let's have a little look here. So I've explained quite a lot about what's going on here. Some spells I want to mention then are certainly Flame Strike. If you're doing like 4 or 5 targets plus, you want to start Flame Striking instead of using Pyroblast. Yeah, that's generally what you're speaking. But most of the time, what you want to be doing is firing off as many pyros as possible while simultaneously keeping things like Phoenix Flames recharging. If you manage to get the braces, obviously make good use of it as best you can, right? So this is a bad one because I want my Incanter's Flow to be up higher. If I would have waited 1 second, we probably would have got a 5 Incanter's Flow Pyroblast out of that. When it comes to Combustion, make sure you've got good timers. Okay, so you want to get add-ons like Tell Me When or Weak Auras or whatever, because you want a good notification of when Combustion's coming, because these things take time to recharge, and you want to get the best use out of them. Yeah? And try and set up to have as many Phoenix Flames and Fire Blasts as possible, so you can actually get this instant cast flurry of attacks like this in, yeah? This is what you're building for. You're building for this mega nuke. 1 second left, didn't quite fit it in, tried to fit the Scorch in, and then going into this long Pyro cast here. Ooh, again, bad Incanter's Flow. Bad mage, terrible mage. But that's what you want to be trying to do in nearly all scenarios, is preparing for your Combustion is what you'll hear a lot when you get used to a Fire Mage, is I'm preparing for my Combustion right now. That means I'm not going to Fire Blast absolutely everything. I need my charges to come back. That's what it's all about, just taking your time, setting up for that Mega Combustion, thinking about when your Combustion is going to make the best use of its purpose, right? So you can blow things up real fast. Talents-wise, I've explained what goes on there. Now, I think I should give special mention on the Mage, because this is going to be the most important spell, especially if you start raiding Tomb of Sargeras, is this Ice Block, okay? So Ice Block encases you in a block of ice, protecting you from all attacks and damage for 10 seconds. So you've probably heard by now, World of Soakcraft. It is World of Soakcraft, man. I'm ice blocking something on pretty much every goddamn fight. In Tomb. I think the only fights that I don't have to soak something particularly, like if you ever see my raid videos that'll pop up on the channel, you'll see my name listed in various things all the time. And that's because from Goroth, you're soaking. Inquisition, you're not. Hajatan, you're not. But Mistress, yes, as many times as humanly possible. Sisters, sometimes, but not a soak. Desolate Host, yes. Ice Block is invaluable there, particularly as you get to more higher difficulties. And the list goes on after that. Kill Jaden, definitely. Avatar, yes. Right? Maiden, not particularly. But you're soaking a hell of a lot, and usually multiple times a fight. As such, that's where Frost kind of beats out Fire, especially in Tomb of the harder difficulties, is Frost tends to beat out because you're doing many soaks, and your guild will want you to have many Ice Blocks. But Ice Block is your friend. Please get used to using it. Please get used to it being keybound, okay? Please get used to doing that. Other than that, get used to those pyros. Be predictable. Be meticulous. What am I doing next? Right, I have a Phoenix Flames to get back off cooldown. Cool. Gonna get rid of that. Now I've got them both recharging. Nice. Oh, I got that sweet, sweet pyro braces. Let's get rid of that. And you want to be paying attention to your cooldown, so you're not wasting any. If you do feel like you're wasting some, remember you can fire your Fire Blast while you're casting. Is watch what to do after a pyro. What's my next spell? What am I casting next? It's very, very important that you get this. Even if it's going to be like there. You see the way it was about to hit 3? I Fire Blasted during my long pyro blast in order to get that recharging and get that using. These are all the things that you want to be doing with your Fire Mage. Get used to this crit method of rotation, and you'll be golden. You'll be absolutely golden. My conclusion to the Fire Mage is it's the funnest spec. I believe so. Since the loss of double Ice Lance on the Frost Mage, I think Fire is back to being the funnest of the 3 specs. But again, that's entirely subjective. Add-ons are definitely going to be something like Tell Me When and Weak Auras, purely to track all the procs, particularly if you've got the braces. If you're using the belt, so you need to know when the target reaches below 30% health. These are like the best legendaries for it. And just making sure that you have good awareness of when your combustion is coming so you can line everything up real nice, okay? Get those timers nice and sorted and get used to how often you crit. The reason I say this is you can get a feel for your mage, particularly with fire. You have a feel for when things are going to happen, and it is crucial that you have that knowledge. Absolutely crucial that you have that knowledge. Once you know, and you can be very sort of like, you know what? I'm 90% sure this is going to happen next. That's when you start seeing the real DPS happen. That's when it kicks off, because you're not just like, I wonder what the Fire Mage will give me next. You can get a definite feel for what's going to happen. So if you do miss a crit, you know the odds that you're going to crit next, right? So that's where you want to be. Ladies and gentlemen, the Fire Mage, enjoy it. Please don't blindly follow whatever somebody in Mega Gear is doing. Bye-bye.